You just have to think 14 moves ahead, that's all.
So if you've just remortgaged your house or taken out a bank loan in order to get the new iPhone 13, or whether you're just straight up balling, here are 13 of the best tips and tricks for you to do straight off the bat. And at the end, I'll even throw in a few more kind of hidden ones that you should know about as well. First things first, let's get this out of the box. So some of you guys might know this and some of you might not. It depends on how familiar you are with display technology, but we have OLED screens in the iPhone 12 and the iPhone 13. And what this means is when there's black areas of the screen, the pixels are actually off. And when they're off, they're not using power. So that means your phone is using less power. So I highly recommend you do this one because it's gonna help your battery life and it's also gonna make things look awesome. So go to settings, go down to display. So we're looking for display and brightness. Here we go. And at the top, you can have light mode. Everything's bright, using more power. And we have dark mode. And this is where it's gonna save power. And I honestly think it's better for your eyes and it looks better as well. So definitely do this one first. Okay, tip number 2. This is an important one and a lot of people don't realize how important this is. It can actually affect your sleep. I don't know about you guys, but if I don't get enough sleep, I just don't function properly the next day. So think about this one, the night shift. So what you can do here is schedule the phone to go into night shift colors. So that's gonna reduce the blue light, which means your eyes are gonna absorb less blue light, which means you're gonna get better sleep. And who doesn't want better sleep? And you can actually adjust the level of warmth and coolness of the blue light as well. So I do recommend you do this. Schedule when you normally go to bed. If you use your phone in bed for a little while, I would suggest you schedule it 1 hour before you go to bed and then sort of 1 hour before you get out of bed. That way you're not going to ruin your sleep. Trust me, do this one. Okay, tip number 3. This one's a new one, or fairly new one for iOS users. So it is widgets. So you can see right here, I have these little stacks where I can flick through these. I do recommend you make the most out of these, customize these with the things you need the most. So easiest way to do this, hold your finger down on an empty bit of the screen. Up here where you've got a little plus, hit that. Here you can choose widgets. Let's say I want Pinterest. I can drag that onto this stack at the top. And now I have a Pinterest widget there. So I can skip through and bring up Pinterest whenever I want. Use the ones that make the most sense for you. Do make the most of those because it saves you having to swipe left and right on the home screen all the time. iPhone now has an app gallery, which is cool, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But anyway, customize your widgets and also check out the App Store for third-party widgets. And if you guys can recommend any good ones, let everyone know in the comments below. So tip number 4, let's go back to settings. And here we're gonna go to home screen. So if you go to home screen here, so this one in my opinion is gonna be an important one for a lot of you guys who are getting a brand new phone. If you're just sort of migrating from one iPhone to another, all of the apps are just going to continue across. But if you're setting up a new phone, I do recommend you do this. So when you download apps, it adds it to the home screen. And if you're downloading 20, 30 apps that you need on your phone, you're going to end up with so many pages and it's just annoying. And sometimes, let's say you need to download a parking app and you're only going to use it that once. There's no point of it being on your home screen. So what you can do is tell the phone to default to adding downloaded apps to your app library only. So that means instead of having tons of pages, what you can do is actually just have it here and then you can search it whenever you want. So parking app, where is it? I haven't downloaded it yet, but if I had, it would be there. DeviantArt, let's say I don't need that on the home screen. I can remove that and that can stay in the app library. So all new apps you download will appear in the app library, not on the home screen. I do recommend you turn that feature on. For me, coming over from Android, just organizing the apps on the home screen is such a nightmare because you kind of have to juggle them around to get things where you want. If they're all in the app library, much easier to manage. So I do recommend turning that one on. So tip number 5, back into the settings menu here. Here we're gonna go to Control Center. So in the Control Center here, we can customize what things we have just by swiping at the top right corner here. So you can see we've got a few things already, but we can add more to that. And I do recommend adding more to that. And there's some good ones which I recommend. So low power mode, that wasn't added as standard. You can add that. Dark mode. So if you want to switch out of dark mode for whatever reason, if you add that to this menu here, we can switch it on and off very quickly if we want to. Low power mode, if we're running out of power, we can toggle it on and off. Definitely look at this. Decide which ones of these are most important to you. For example, magnifier, if your eyesight isn't good, that could be useful. Screen recordings, all this kind of stuff, customize it, make sure you have the things you use the most. in the control center when you swipe down from the top right corner. So I don't know if you guys have seen any of those funny videos where like a girlfriend holds up the phone in front of the boyfriend's face while he's sleeping and then goes through all of his photos and all of his messages on his phone. Well, you can actually stop that from happening if you want, and this is how you do it. So you go to your settings, scroll down to Face ID and passcodes, and here halfway down the page we've got require attention for Face ID, attention aware features. So this is where your eyes have to be open and looking at the screen in order to unlock it. I do recommend you switch this on, even if you're not worried about that kind of stuff. It's just an extra security measure that's going to help you, especially if you've got your bank details all hooked up to this and stuff like that. You don't want someone getting into your bank account while you're sleeping and emptying all your funds. And here's a little bonus one on the same page, set up alternate appearance. So have you guys ever seen those videos where a girl looks completely different at the beginning of the video as she does at the end of the video when she puts on her makeup? Now that dramatic change could affect the Face ID. So if you're the type of person who does that kind of makeup or looks completely different sometimes, then you might want to set up an alternate appearance, and this is where you do it. Here's tip number 7. This one is another security related one. So when your phone is locked, did you know people can actually access your camera, your torch, and a bunch of information, and even mess around with your settings here? Now, if you want to stop people doing that, if you have untrustworthy friends who might start taking funny pictures with your phone, even though it's locked, you might want to do this one. So let's go back into the settings menu. Let's go back to Face ID and passcode. Scroll all the way down where it says allow access when locked. All of these things are available right now. If we want to restrict any of these, we just hit the switch to switch them off. And be mindful of your choices here. So you might have noticed there actually wasn't a toggle there for the camera on the lock screen. So the camera on the lock screen, even if you switch all of those things off, will still work. So this is how you stop it from working. So you need to go to screen time. Here you go to content privacy and restrictions, and where it says allowed apps, make sure this is toggled on. Go to allowed apps, and here is where you can switch it off. And once you've done that, then that restricts it from opening on the lock screen. Anyway, that's how you do it. So here's tip number 8, and it's not to do with security this time, it's to do with the camera. So what we're going to do is go into settings and find the camera here in the list. And we can actually just key in camera, which is probably the quicker way of doing it. There we go. So once you're in here, here's what I recommend you do. Switch on the grid lines. The grid lines are going to help you compose better photos. A lot of people don't realize sometimes where the center of the photo is. And here's a little ninja tip when it comes to taking photos on a phone. Where these lines intersect are naturally where the human eye is drawn to. So if you want to compose a really nice photo, try using these little cross sections to line up the key focal points of the photo. And once you start playing with this, you'll probably notice a difference in your camera game. Anyway, let's go back to settings just quickly. So if you go to format, this is important. If you really do want to level up your photography, then you definitely want to be using Apple Pro RAW. This is a format that holds way more data than the normal photographs. I don't recommend you use this all of the time, but I do recommend you use it when you want to take really high quality photos, because when you have more information in the picture, when you put filters onto it or put it into Instagram, you're going to be able to adjust the picture so much more. You can make it look so much better when you're taking those beautiful photographs. If you're on holiday and you want to get those beautiful sunsets and all this kind of stuff, use the Pro RAW format. The file sizes are a lot bigger. That's why I say don't leave it on all of the time, because you're going to kill your memory on your phone. But definitely use this in those key moments. Trust me, it's going to be worth it. So here's tip number 9. Let's go back into the camera settings menu. Here's a new feature. It is photographic styles. Now, this is going to be really handy for you guys. I think the iPhone's camera is one of the best, honestly it is. But if you want to add a bit of your own flair to it, then you can do it now. You can add sort of pre-installed filters to your photos every time you take a photo. So right now we're on standard. The tone is 0, the warmth is 0. If we go across, you can see tone -50, warmth 0. You can actually change the complete style of the picture. So if you like cooler tones, it's there. So you've got these 5 here to mess around with. Play around with these, see what you like, because what I've noticed having tested so many phones over the years is different manufacturers have different kind of color styling, and Apple are giving you all of those styles to choose from pretty much. So play around with that, see how you like it. But again, you want to level up your photography completely, use the Pro RAW mode. So here's tip number 10. This one has been so vital to me, and I'm sure there's some of you guys out there who might be in the same situation where your mobile operator signal isn't that strong. So you can see right now I've got 1 bar, and when people phone me, sometimes they can't hear what I'm saying properly, it will disconnect, or sometimes they'll phone me and it won't even get through. It's a nightmare, but there is a way to stop that from happening. So all you need to do is go to mobile data here and enable Wi-Fi calling. As default, Wi-Fi calling is off. Turn this on. What will happen is whenever the signal drops out, it's going to default to Wi-Fi calling. So people can still phone you, you can still make phone calls over your Wi-Fi. That is a definite must for me. I've got that turned on because I need it. And I think it's good to have it on because if you're out and about, let's say you're at a coffee shop or something like that and you've got no phone signal, when you connect to a Wi-Fi hotspot, you can then make phone calls as usual. So definitely switch this one on. I think it's quite important. So you guys probably saw the launch event of this phone and the new cinematic camera feature, which is the feature that allows you to kind of focus between different objects and if there's people in the frame, it'll focus back and forth. But this phone also supports Dolby Vision recording. So this is how you get to Dolby Vision. So go back into your settings, go back to camera, and then here we're going to record video. And you can see it's set as default to 1080-30. That's a pretty good picture, but in order to get the Dolby Vision recording, what you need to make sure is the HDR video is switched on. And then you can go all the way up to 4K 60 on this particular phone. This is the Pro Max version. And then here's a little ninja tip for you guys. I do recommend you do this because it's pretty cool. So if you're filming, you can actually set auto frames per second. So it will actually decide whether this is a good scenario for 30 frames per second, or this is a good scenario for 60 frames per second. 60 frames per second is going to be good for like fast moving objects, for example, a sports event or something like that. 30 frames per second is what most films are shot in. So you get that kind of cinematic look. If you have it in auto, you're actually giving the phone permission to decide for you. So if you don't know the difference between 60 and 30, I definitely recommend having that on auto. Definitely switch on HDR video so you can get your full 10-bit high dynamic range recording in Dolby Vision. Make sure that's toggled on. If you're so unlucky that on the way home you're getting stalked by someone and you think they want to try and steal your phone or something like that, you might want to set up a little ninja move that you can do that will actually dial out to someone in case of emergency. And you can do that with the iPhone. I haven't seen many other phones with this kind of feature on it, but check this out. This is really cool. So let's go back to settings. Go to emergency SOS. So here we can actually set the side button here, the power button. If you click it 5 times to dial out to an emergency contact. This is a good feature. Who knows what could happen? The world is crazy right now. If you're worried about getting your phone stolen off you, or maybe you have a health condition and you might need emergency help, I definitely recommend you set up an emergency contact. Then if you tap the side button 5 times, it will dial that person in case of emergency. This could be a very useful feature, maybe even a life-saving feature. So make the most of it if you feel you need it. So thank you for making it all the way to tip number 13. And going back to the first tip that I told you guys, if you subscribe, good karma will come your way. So if you've got kids, you might want to be able to restrict what they can do on your phone. You don't want to give them access to your bank accounts, for example. Well, it's very easy to do on the iPhone. Go into settings. What you're looking for here is screen time. And on the screen time page at the bottom, you can set up screen time for family. Here, you can set up a passcode and what they can and can't do on your phone. If you let anybody use your phone for anything, I highly recommend you set this up. So here's a bonus tip. This is an OLED screen. It has an incredible high dynamic range and you can actually adjust the contrast on this to make the most out of it. Very easy to do this. It's kind of hidden away though. So let me show you how to find it. So within the settings menu, if you go to accessibility, here we're going to display and text size. And if you want to, you can adjust the contrast. So we can increase the contrast. So the difference between light and dark is expanded. So all you do is increase contrast and now the black's slightly more grayer tones and there's still the deepest black as well, but there's more difference between the deepest black and the deepest white. That might help you see things a little bit better. If you want higher contrast on your phone, switch this mode on. So here's another little ninja tip for you guys. And you probably already know this has a 120 Hertz refresh rate display, and 120 Hertz means it's refreshing 120 times per second, and that uses more power than, let's say, 60 frames per second, which a lot of old iPhones used to use. So what you can actually do on this phone, if you want to conserve power a smart way, and you'll probably not even notice much of a difference, you can restrict the frames per second manually. This is how you do it. Go to settings, go to accessibility, and then here where it says motion, go to that setting there. So we can reduce the motion if we want to. We can tell it don't use the 120 Hertz. And we can also restrict the frame rate to 60 Hertz, so 60 frames per second. By doing this, you're gonna save battery. Although I will say, you just spent a fortune on this phone, you probably wanna enjoy that Pro Motion 120 Hertz. So see how you get on with it. Test this setting by turning it off and seeing how much more battery you get. And if it's significant, then maybe you might wanna leave that feature on all the time. But at least now, you know you can do it. And here's the last tip. Check out this boring background that I have on this phone right now. I mean, they're kind of nice, but you know everybody who just bought a new iPhone is gonna have the same backgrounds. So if you wanna stand out a little bit, here's a little ninja tip. People always ask me, where do I get my backgrounds from? And Pinterest is a very good place to do it. So let's say I wanna find a Marvel wallpaper or something like that. Just type that in here. Tons of them pop up. Let's find a good one. Here we go, look. Captain America with the hammer and the shield and the Iron Man suit. That's pretty cool. Hit these three dots at the top here, hit download image. That goes to your photo gallery. You can then go to your photo gallery on your home screen and apply that as your wallpaper. And there you go, you got a really cool custom wallpaper, so you don't have to look like everybody else. You don't want to be like everybody else, do you? And the last thing I'm going to say to you guys, and I think this is very important, but I didn't want to say it at the beginning because I didn't want it to come across like I'm trying to push products on you guys. But get a good case. So I ended up getting the official case at the Apple store, but I do have some go-tos when it comes to cases, and I also have some go-tos when it comes to screen protectors. So I'll leave the links below this video. If you guys want to check those out, there'll be affiliate links, and it will help the channel if you do pick them up through that link. So I would appreciate it if you do end up buying one of them. Anyway, appreciate you guys watching this video. And if you did get some value out of this, I would really appreciate a thumbs up. And if you just subscribed, you're now one of the finest subscribers known to man. I'll see you in the next one. Don't be late.